Donald Trump doesn't have any clue on what to do about Venezuela. Actually, he has never had a clue. On inauguration day, he said that Venezuela was tough, and today it continues being tough. He has sent 10% of United States Navy and Army into the Caribbean, while he seems unable to shoot. Apparently he is scared because Venezuela is receiving fresh brand new weaponry from Iran, Russia, and China, including radars, missiles, and spare parts. And Donald Trump urgently wishes to pivot to bomb Nigeria right now, without any serious planning on how to deal with Nigeria. Tulsi Gabbard has spoken in Bahrain a few days ago, and nobody has dismissed her yet, while Trump and Marco Rubio have dismissed strikes on Venezuela. Or maybe those strikes will be delayed until after the midterms, which is a year from now. But then, would those ships be wandering around the Caribbean for a full year? It's funny because Venezuelans are slowly realizing that everything has been a fake show, and the small talk is increasingly getting back to regular topics of conversation and regular opposition to government's policies. But that military feast from the United States seems to be waning in Venezuelan conversation. However, international community still seems obsessed with a possible war of United States against Venezuela. Most commentators are still speaking of it as if it were imminent. We have no reports on where the boats are. If the boats were really close to Venezuelan land, we would know it. The fact that there is no mention on where the boats are means that they are far enough. USS Gerald Ford was seen in Sardinia or Gibraltar or somewhere really far away in the Mediterranean. Exercises are conducted in Puerto Rico, which is also far away. No further approaches to Margarita Island or Lorchila. This whole thing seems de-escalating and nobody seems to notice it. Venezuelan authorities have been speaking today about domestic issues such as night feast in Chacao municipality that was attended by a lot of people. Chacao is a municipality acting as a stronghold for Venezuelan opposition. And instead of planning for bombardments, they are actually producing city night feasts attended by Venezuelan population, sympathizers, and opposers of Maduro government. And Chacao municipality was congratulated by the government, even though it is an opposition municipality, because they organized a really nice feast. Perhaps these weeks of constant fear of being bombarded will set the miracle of having opposition and government supporters speaking to each other on a more frequent basis. Lack of dialogue has been the main cause of Venezuela's decline. Dialogue can be seen in broad terms. It's not only a dialogue between two people, it can be dialogue through economic transactions between countries. When OFAC sanctions your country and doesn't let you sell your petroleum through the United States-based international financial system, That is also lack of dialogue. Considering dialogue as a monetary transaction from one bank account to another bank account. Russia seems determined in helping out all its friends, including Iran and Venezuela, and it's sending weapons to Iran, while Iran continues supporting Venezuela with other weapons as well. While China continues its own business, and even Donald Trump recognized that China and Russia are tough negotiators, suggesting that perhaps Donald Trump negotiated in secret about Venezuela with Russia and China. Neither Russia nor China will budge, and the United States is explicitly turning back. It looks like they will continue shooting speedboats. However, that might be also ending because opinion polls in the United States are condemning strongly Republican Party chances of winning various elections that will be held tomorrow. Today was a strange day, at least in my case. I needed to rest a lot. I have not been able to concentrate much. It looks like I was expecting a war during many weeks, and now that I realize that war is being averted, I have felt very exhausted and tired with no energy, as all my energy was concentrated on survival. And now I suddenly realize that there might not be any war after all in Venezuela, thank God. However, my suggestion to the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry is to speed up negotiations for opening up our embassy in Burkina Faso, because it seems that Venezuela's relationship with Africa must be prominent, as our brothers and sisters of Nigeria are now in danger of being extinguished by United States random bombings across the planet. Venezuela's relations with Africa are limited, although we are trying to increase them through new embassies in Burkina Faso and Zimbabwe. I have visited earlier in my life residences of embassies of Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea in Caracas. But African countries and Venezuela, we are all limited income countries, and our embassies in the other country are never able to produce lots of cultural activities as other countries that have higher budgets for social activities. Although I am really looking forward to the opening of Burkina Faso embassy in Caracas. It looks like a very interesting country. They are doing a great job kicking out French colonialism, and they might be able to offer Venezuelans fresh ideas. But for the time being, we are just observing how international media are still obsessed with imminent attacks into Venezuela, while during the last few days, signs have increased that war might be averted, as long as Venezuela continues receiving enough deterrence material from Russia, Iran, or China. The minute the United States perceives Venezuela as not getting enough support from our allies, they will, of course, attack. New narratives of Donald Trump will become very difficult because somehow he must manage wars within Chicago, Portland, Washington, D.C., and other stressful areas within the United States, plus the war on Venezuela, plus Ukraine-Russia war, plus Gaza-Israel war, plus war on Iran, plus Taiwan and China potential war. The number of tomahawks they have is limited, and it is likely that Oreshnik missiles are already on their way to Venezuela if they haven't arrived yet, as Donald Trump is seriously considering sending tomahawks into Ukraine. Very rogue conditions. It looks increasingly likely that most countries will somehow unify our militaries against the common enemy of the United States, and that is not rhetoric, but reality. As most countries have become enemies of the United States, as explicitly stated by President Donald Trump. While the world is still debating how to transcend dollar transactions for our oil exports, there is still this vision that most oil in Venezuela is from the Orinoco Belt, while we have many conventional fields that can be recovered at a lower cost. This emphasis in defending ourselves from wars has momentarily shifted the attention away on how to best develop our petroleum industry, but perhaps within the next few weeks we will get back on track, as Venezuelans should strive differentiated strategies for heavy oil, for conventional oil, and for liquefied natural gas. And it seems that communication must be enhanced, because even after all these months of a whole planet constantly speaking about Venezuela, lags are recurring and misinformation provided by original sources that are not even within Venezuela are contradictory, and as those accounts have lots of followers and people who are within Venezuela are not well known, they speak in Spanish, it seems that reliable information coming from within Venezuela is absolutely scarce, and producing petroleum in Venezuela is not as hard as conventional Orinoco Belt narrative of constant challenges. Zulia, Anzoátegui, and Monaga states have plenty of conventional oil fields that can be recovered for light and medium oil much more quickly than anywhere in the Orinoco Belt. And the virgin territory of Gran Mariscal Sucre blocks on the Caribbean Sea and Plataforma del Tana blocks on the Atlantic Ocean, they are all plentiful of gas, and they can be developed without Trinidad and Tobago, as there are other Caribbean countries that might partner with us. So please, I would like to reassure viewers that Venezuelan oil industry is not as complicated as mainstream media is determined to convey. If Venezuela's oil industry were as difficult as it is portrayed, there wouldn't be that much interest from the United States in invading us. Main problem right now is political and military. And I would say it's an induced political problem, because in general, there is peace in Venezuela. Warmongers are, however, intending to produce war, and for that reason, you still have Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard basically giving up on shooting or bombarding Venezuela, but international media is completely frantic on the topic of invasion. They make it sound imminent while the situation has already been de-escalating for a few days. While United States government continues shut down, the House of Representatives fails to meet so that they don't swear in the representative they need for releasing Epstein files. Senate seems to have gathered a bunch of Republicans that will no longer support war against Venezuela. United States national debt has exceeded $38 trillion. Russian and Chinese allies of Venezuela are very tough, as expressed by President Trump. Tulsi Gabbard already stated that the United States will no longer engage in regime change. Marco Rubio has been silent after telling reporters of the Miami Herald from his hometown of Miami that their sources were wrong. But still, international media, with increasingly outdated sources, are imagining that a war in Venezuela will pop up just because Pete Hegseth played an expensive show of deploying military toys all across the Caribbean, which are not doing any harm whatsoever. Every time any American toy approaches Venezuela, Venezuela responds proportionately, and everything has been done so professionally that we haven't had any military casualties yet. Unless, of course, United States shoots first and initiates a war. However, Donald Trump still sees himself as a peace president, and in moments of truth, he usually chickens out. However, it looks like during the next few days, we will still be confronting de-escalation narratives with the status quo imminent war. The problem is that further escalation would be a missile shooting, and Donald Trump already ruled them out. So how can he escalate? He says that he has a secret plan. What would Donald Trump's secret plan on Venezuela be? About a year ago, we had Eric Prince with Ya Casi Venezuela. They were trying to send a military army into Venezuela to depose Maduro. Now we have a private military army, which are the Russian Wagners, who are actually supporting Maduro. But Eric Prince, last year, he opened up PayPal and Bitcoin and credit card accounts so that people would deposit money for his private army. He collected over $1 million, which then were confiscated by Bank of America, and Eric Prince has not returned any money to anyone who were scammed by the regime change. And then Edmundo Gonzalez was supposed to be sworn in as president of Venezuela on January 10th, and he failed to show up at the Venezuelan embassy, so Maduro got sworn in. And Venezuela has been in electoral peace since then, as the opposition extinguished all their strategies to claim victory, as they failed to show adequate proof to the Venezuelan Supreme Tribunal of Justice. So the secret plan of Eric Prince was a scam. Therefore, chances are that the secret plan of Donald Trump for Venezuela is another scam. A scam to the American people, because the American taxpayer has spent millions, if not billions of dollars in deploying their expensive Navy and Army and Air Force toys into the Caribbean, extrajudicially shooting fishermen and civilians with no military achievements. And as diplomacy continues being privileged, many of the United States assets deployed to the Caribbean will eventually leave the area, although perhaps activity in Puerto Rico will continue escalating because they need to hold their game as active as possible. But this fake Venezuela war seems to have been a bluff. President Maduro offered Donald Trump dialogue, including a rational investment scenario for petroleum and rare earth resources, as it seems that the United States is looking for trading partners beyond China. Even though there is resentment against the United States for all this mean attitude towards Venezuela, we must be prepared to attend dialogue between Maduro and Trump for when the time comes. And perhaps some of Venezuelan resources will be open for American investment if and only if our previous commitments with other investors from other countries are respected. Venezuela should be a country where gracefully Russian, American, Iranian, Chinese, and Indian interests and Vietnamese interests should work side by side for a common development of a peaceful planet Earth.